Introduction. The Battle of the Alamo was a significant event in the Texas Revolution, where Mexican troops led by President General Antonio López de Santa Anna recaptured the Alamo mission, killing most of the occupants after a 13-day siege. Santa Anna's refusal to take prisoners during the battle motivated many Texans and Tejanos to join the Texian army. The Texans eventually defeated the Mexican army at the Battle of San Jacinto, ending the rebellion in favor of the newly formed Republic of Texas. The Alamo mission was garrisoned by about 100 Texans, primarily recent immigrants from the U.S. The Texian force grew slightly with the arrival of reinforcements led by eventual Alamo co-commanders James Bowie and William B. Travis. After several skirmishes with minimal casualties, the Mexican army advanced on the Alamo on March 6, and after repelling 2 attacks, the Texians were unable to fend off a third attack. Most of the Texian fighters withdrew into interior buildings, and those who were unable to reach these points were killed by the Mexican cavalry as they attempted to escape. Several non-combatants were sent to spread word of the Texian defeat, and the news sparked a rush to join the Texian army in a panic known as the Runaway Scrape. The battle was overshadowed by events from the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848, but the Alamo complex gradually became known as a battle site rather than a former mission. And the Texas legislature purchased the land and buildings in the early 20th century, designating the Alamo Chapel as an official Texas state shrine. Background. In 1835, Mexico experienced significant political changes due to the triumph of conservative forces in the elections. This led to the implementation of Las Siete Leyes, or 7 laws, which aimed to centralize and strengthen the national government. One of the policies was the ban of slavery and immigration, which angered many immigrants in Mexican Texas. This, coupled with increased law enforcement, led to the Texian Revolution. The Texian army, mostly composed of recent illegal immigrants from the United States, systematically defeated Mexican troops stationed in Texas, with the last group surrendering on December 9, 1835. As Mexican troops departed San Antonio de Bexar, Texian soldiers captured the Alamo mission, a makeshift fort. The complex was designed to withstand an attack by native tribes and had thick walls, but the defenders lacked proper firing ports. Texian engineer Green B. Jameson constructed catwalks to allow defenders to fire over the walls. Mexican forces had left behind 19 cannons, which Jameson installed along the walls. Battle. On February 23, 1836, residents of Bexar fled fearing an imminent Mexican army attack. Texian scouts reported the sighting of Mexican troops 1.5 miles outside the town. Few arrangements had been made for a potential siege, and some members of the garrison failed to report for duty. Mexican soldiers occupied Bexar by late afternoon, and when they raised a blood-red flag signifying no quarter, William Barrett Travis responded with a blast from the Alamo's largest cannon. Mexican soldiers established artillery batteries, and each night the batteries inched closer to the Alamo walls. On February 26, Travis ordered the artillery to conserve powder and shot. As news of the siege spread throughout Texas, potential reinforcements gathered in Gonzales, hoping to rendezvous with Colonel James Fannin, who was expected to arrive from Goliad with his garrison. Exterior fighting. On March 5, the Mexican artillery stopped their bombardment and prepared for the final assault on the Alamo. At 5:30 a.m. on March 6, Mexican troops silently advanced towards the Alamo. The Texian sentinels stationed outside the walls were killed in their sleep, allowing Mexican soldiers to approach undetected within musket range of the walls. The Texians were woken by shouts of "Viva Santa Anna" and music from the buglers. Travis rushed to his post and yelled, "Come on, boys, the Mexicans are upon us and we'll give them hell." In the initial moments of the assault, Mexican troops were at a disadvantage due to their column formation, allowing only the front rows of soldiers to fire safely. Lacking canister shot, the Texians filled their cannon with any metal they could find, essentially turning them into giant shotguns. Although some in the front of the Mexican ranks wavered, soldiers in the rear pushed them on. As the troops massed against the walls, Texians were forced to lean over the walls to shoot, leaving them exposed to Mexican fire. The Mexican soldiers closest to the north wall realized that the makeshift wall contained many gaps and toeholds. One of the first to scale the wall was General Juan Amador. At his challenge, his men began swarming up the wall. Amador opened the postern in the north wall, allowing Mexican soldiers to pour into the complex. The Texians abandoned the north wall and the northern end of the west wall, while Texian gunners at the south end of the mission turned their cannon towards the north and fired into the advancing Mexican soldiers, leaving the south end of the mission unprotected. Within minutes, Mexican soldiers had climbed the walls and killed the gunners, gaining control of the Alamo's 18-pounder cannon. By this time, Romero's men had taken the east wall of the compound and were pouring in through the cattle pen. Internal fighting. During the Battle of the Alamo, the Texians fell back to the barracks and chapel, firing from holes carved in the walls. Some Texians stationed along the west wall fled to the San Antonio River, where they fired from a ditch. Others retreated into the horse corral and then tried to escape on foot. The last group, led by Crockett, defended the low wall in front of the church but eventually fell back. The Mexican army gained control of the outer walls and interior of the compound except for the church and rooms along the east and west walls. The Mexicans turned their attention to a Texian flag waving from the roof of one building, killing 4 Mexicans before raising the Mexican flag in that location. The Mexican army worked to secure complete control of the Alamo for the next hour, with many Texians ensconced in the fortified barracks rooms. The last of the Texians to die were the 11 men manning the 2 12-pounder cannons in the chapel. One of the young sons of occupier Anthony Wolfe was killed as soldiers approached the sacristy. By 6:30 a.m., the battle was over, with Mexican soldiers inspecting each corpse and bayoneting any body that moved. The violence continued even after all the Texians were dead, with soldiers firing into dead bodies. Aftermath. After the Battle of the Alamo, Santa Anna demanded the immediate execution of the Texian survivors who surrendered. Different versions of Crockett's death are in circulation, and there is no conclusive evidence to support either of them. Historians have placed the number of Mexican casualties at 400 to 600, while eyewitnesses counted between 182 and 257 Texians killed. Most Mexican soldiers were buried in the local cemetery, Campo Santo, while the Texian bodies were stacked and burned. The Republic of Texas was formed on March 2, 1836, just before the Alamo fell, and its newly elected delegates received a dispatch from Travis warning of his dire situation. They declared independence, and Sam Houston convinced the delegates to remain in Washington on the Brazos to develop a constitution. After Houston became the commander of all Texian troops, he advised all civilians in the area to evacuate, and he ordered his new army to retreat eastward.